Political consequences of globalization. The global shift of political power. Over the past few decades, political power has undergone a fundamental transformation. Where power was once concentrated within national governments, it is now increasingly dispersed across borders. Globalization has created a political environment in which decisions are shaped by global markets, international institutions, multinational corporations, and transnational agreements. This shift has changed how states govern, how leaders make decisions, and how citizens experience politics. Power today is no longer limited to parliaments and presidents. It moves through global financial systems, trade networks, legal frameworks, and diplomatic pressures. As a result, politics has become less visible, less direct, and often less accountable to ordinary citizens. Understanding political globalization. Political globalization refers to the growing influence of global institutions, rules, and networks on national political systems. It involves shared decision-making across borders and reduced autonomy of individual states. This process did not emerge suddenly. It developed gradually through international trade agreements, global financial integration, multilateral diplomacy, technological connectivity. Political globalization links governments into a single system where actions in one country affect many others. While cooperation has increased, political independence has declined. Sovereignty in a globalized political order. Sovereignty is the foundation of the modern nation-state. It means a government has supreme authority within its territory. Globalization has significantly weakened this principle. Countries today must follow international trade rules, global financial regulations, human rights frameworks, environmental agreements. Failure to comply can result in sanctions, trade restrictions, or financial isolation. This limits the freedom of governments to design independent policies, even when such policies are demanded by voters. Trade agreements and political constraints. Modern trade agreements go far beyond tariffs. They include rules on labor standards, environmental policies, intellectual property, government subsidies. Once signed, these agreements become legally binding. Parliaments often cannot reverse them easily. This shifts power away from elected institutions and toward legal frameworks negotiated behind closed doors. Citizens vote for governments, but governments cannot always deliver promised reforms due to global commitments. International financial institutions and domestic politics. Institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and World Bank play a major political role. When countries face financial crises, they often require international loans. These loans come with conditions. Common conditions include reducing public spending, privatizing state assets, cutting subsidies, restructuring labor markets. These reforms directly affect citizens' lives, yet they are shaped outside the national political process. This creates political resentment and social unrest. Economic globalization and political dependence. Global markets reward stability, predictability, and openness. Governments that challenge these expectations risk capital flight and economic pressure. As a result, political decisions increasingly prioritize investor confidence, credit ratings, market reactions. Elections change leaders, but economic policies often remain similar. This leads to the perception that democracy exists without real choice. The decline of policy autonomy. In a globalized system, governments face limited policy options. High taxes may drive investment away. Strong labor protections may reduce competitiveness. National industries struggle against global corporations. As policy space narrows, political debates become symbolic rather than transformative. Citizens feel their votes do not change outcomes. Supranational governance structures. Globalization has strengthened governance beyond the nation-state. Examples include the European Union, international courts, multilateral regulatory bodies. These institutions create common rules to manage shared challenges. However, they also centralize authority at levels distant from voters. Decision-making becomes complex, technical, and difficult to influence. Democratic deficit and public distance. A democratic deficit occurs when decisions are made by institutions that lack direct public accountability. Many global institutions are led by appointed officials rather than elected representatives. Citizens often do not know who makes decisions, how decisions are made, how to challenge them. This creates a gap between power and participation. The changing role of national parliaments. Parliaments increasingly act as implementers rather than creators of policy. International agreements limit legislative flexibility. Budget decisions are constrained by global financial expectations. Political debate becomes focused on management rather than vision. This weakens representative democracy. Globalization and executive power. As international negotiations increase, executive branches gain more authority. Presidents and prime ministers negotiate treaties and agreements with limited parliamentary oversight. This concentrates power within the executive. Checks and balances weaken, especially during crises. Crisis governance and emergency politics. Globalization increases vulnerability to global crises. Financial crashes, pandemics, supply chain disruptions. During crises, governments often rule by emergency powers. While necessary, these measures reduce transparency and accountability. Temporary powers often become permanent. Inequality and political legitimacy. Globalization has increased inequality within many countries. While some benefit from global integration, others face job losses and insecurity. Economic inequality translates into political inequality. Wealthier groups gain influence through lobbying and media access. Trust in democratic institutions declines. Regional disparities and political fragmentation. Globalization benefits urban and connected regions more than rural areas. This creates political divides. Cities versus countryside. Globalized regions versus neglected areas. These divides fuel political polarization. National unity weakens. Global corporations and political influence. Multinational corporations operate across borders and influence political decisions. They lobby governments, shape regulations, and negotiate favorable conditions. Their economic power often exceeds that of small states. This raises concerns about corporate influence over public policy. Regulatory competition between states. Countries compete to attract investment by lowering regulations. This includes lower corporate taxes, weaker labor protections, relaxed environmental standards. This race to the bottom limits progressive political reform. Governments fear losing competitiveness. Security politics in a globalized world. Global threats require international cooperation. Terrorism, cyber warfare, transnational crime. Security policies increasingly involve intelligence sharing and joint operations. National security decisions are influenced by alliances and global strategies. Surveillance and political control. Technology enables global surveillance networks. States collect data for security and economic purposes. This raises concerns about privacy, civil liberties, and political freedom. Power becomes more centralized and less visible. Migration and political pressure. Globalization increases movement of people. Migration reshapes demographics, labor markets, and cultural identities. Governments face political pressure to manage borders while respecting international norms.
This creates tension between national politics and global obligations. Cultural globalization and political identity. Global media spreads ideas, values, and norms across borders. Local political identities interact with global narratives. This can strengthen democratic values or create cultural resistance. Politics becomes a struggle over identity and belonging. Nationalism as a reaction to globalization. As global power expands, nationalist movements gain support. They promise restored sovereignty, strong borders, national control. Nationalism becomes a political response to perceived loss of power. Political trust and institutional decline. Trust is essential for stable political systems. Globalization complicates responsibility. When policies fail, governments blame global forces. Citizens lose faith in institutions. Political disengagement increases. Rebuilding political accountability. The challenge is not rejecting globalization but governing it. Stronger transparency. Democratic oversight of global institutions. Public participation in global decisions. These are necessary to restore legitimacy. The ongoing political transformation. Globalization continues to evolve. Politics is no longer purely national. The future depends on whether political systems adapt to protect democracy within a global framework. Closing perspective on global political change. Globalization has reshaped political authority, limited sovereignty, and shifted power beyond national borders. These changes define the political realities of the modern world and explain growing public frustration and institutional distrust. Part 2 coming soon. For more related global political analysis, visit and explore the Global Lens channel.